Uh-oh, hold on a second. Let me see if I can get the sound on here. Hmm. Nope, nope, nope.
How about
Oh,
now?
this is good. Yeah. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Awesome.
Did you change something or was it me?
I changed. I just turned up my volume on my laptop.
Great.
Can you hear me? Can everyone hear us? It looks like we're getting some thumbs up and some yeps.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, let's give, I don't know, how about 30 more seconds or so for a few more folks to jump on and then we'll get started.
Great.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much.
I see all these familiar faces joining. This is
Oh,
wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. You come with an entourage, Robert. That must mean you're a celebrity.
Or I coerce a bunch of family into watching my public stuff.
Thing, entourage, family, same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good deal. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I know we'll have a couple of folks that continue to jump on. Welcome to everyone who is new to SC Codes. Welcome to everyone who is on our platform already, here to learn a little bit more about SC Codes and what we do. Morgan Boykin, and I am our volunteer and community coordinator with SC Codes. So I have the pleasure with working with awesome mentors who are our volunteers across our platform who help our learners access resources and materials to continue and start their education in coding. So today we have a very special series. We have Ask a Developer. I feel like I should have some really cool background music there. But the very first Ask a Developer series, and this is really just a chance for our learners, our community to peek into the mind of a real life developer, learn a little bit more about what they do, how they work, how they got to where they are. Um, but before we do that, I would love to tell you just a little bit about SC Codes, just in case you are new to our platform. So SC Codes is a free resource for residents of South Carolina. We are an ecosystem of support for folks looking to gain coding skills. So whether you are totally new to coding, whether you're already a developer and looking to skill up, or if you're just kind of teetering with, is development coding a career change that I might want to peek into? We have the resources across our platform to help you do that. So at the end, I'll give you a little bit more information about how you can find out more about SC Codes. But now let's jump into Robert. And again, our first developer in our series of Ask a Developer. Thank you so much for being with us, Robert. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, so happy to be here.
Awesome. So I'm going to give a very short background before we dive into you. Robert is a senior software engineer with Articulate living in Charleston with his wife and newborn. He has taught Ruby on Rails and React at the Iron Yard, which is a friend to SC Codes. And he's also a mentor across our platform, which means he supports our learners across our platform. So we are really thankful to have him in the SC Codes community. And again, thankful to have him here with us. So Robert, if you would not mind just giving us a little bit of background about yourself, we'd love to hear about your educational background, how you got started in development, how many hours of sleep you may be getting with a newborn, but just anything about yourself that you can share.
Sure. Goodness. Well, I guess I'll try to keep it relevant to the code stuff. We won't talk about, likes, long walks on the beach and stuff like
Yes.
that. Um, so I always had an interest in computers since I was a kid. We were lucky enough to have one in our house. Liked playing games and, losing at chess to the computer and all that. And, throughout my, middle school, high school days, I was interested in, websites and Flash, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It just, it went along with the games that I was playing. And, didn't do that well in, in high school, like computer class, because I probably didn't care enough, or like I didn't apply myself. I thought, oh gosh, this is boring. I just want to do fun stuff. So didn't do anything in college with computers really at all. I was an English literature major. That was the fourth change. Yeah, the fourth major change. Almost had a Spanish minor, and then got out, and I was working at anyone who's been to Sullivan's Island, working at Poe's Tavern, and bartending some events and catering and waiting and bussing tables, and was doing that for a while and playing music, at night, and doing this 7 days a week. And after a while, I said, man, this is really hard. I don't know if I'm built for this. And I got introduced to somebody who spoke to me briefly and said, you know what, why don't you come by Monday, bring a resume, see if you like what you see, and maybe come and try out an apprenticeship if you're interested. And I said, I have no idea what you're saying, but that sounds good. So I showed up. This is about late 2010, and I showed up, coat and tie, no, resume with no relevant experience in hand, at a local software company. And I've come inside, opened the door. People are sitting there with blue jeans. There's surfboards, bicycles,
Oh my God.
shorts, t-shirts, picnic tables. In a room about this size, there were about 10 people, working, as hard as they could work, typing stuff into computers. And I said, I have no idea what you're doing, but I know that I want to do this.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So they took me on, and I was able. I basically shadowed them for a month while still working other jobs, and eventually came on as an intern at $8 an hour. And after a total of 3 months, I was a full-time employee, which is great. And then fast forward through time, 10 years later, we've been through the business accelerators, moved all around the world, been able to work remotely, met my now wife in London when I was traveling through there, and I've lived in New Zealand for a few years as well. And so the journey from then to now is just drastic, from playing music and working in the service industry to being able to kind of just, wherever there's Wi-Fi, pick up, solve a few problems with collaboratively with people, and kind of work on my own time. As long as I get the work done, I can work on my own time.
That's awesome, Robert. And I think your story is so important for our learners to hear, because again, many are thinking about career many aren't sure if coding is right for them. So it's a really kind of not easy, but low risk way to jump in and kind of feel around and see if it's going to work for you, and see if they have that kind of aha moment that you had with jeans and t-shirts, and this is what I want to do. So super excited to share more about your story. So in that, can you tell us a little bit about where you are now, what you do, what a typical day for you is like? I'm sure typical is probably, but what a typical day is like for you as a developer?
Sure. So I've got a senior software engineer title, which is going to vary from business to business, of course. But I'm working at a company called Articulate. We've got a couple of products, Articulate 360 and Rise.com. And I've been on and off with this company since 2013. So worked for them for a while, left, and did some other things, and then eventually came back contracting for a few years, and then came back full time. And so I work with about 200 odd other people that are all around the world. People
Wow.
from the Philippines, Ireland, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, all across the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere. And it's really cool. And it's a totally remote company. So no office anywhere in the world since, I believe, 2002. And so, day to day, people are going to be working in different time zones. And so we try to do as many things asynchronously as possible. Kind of, I'll leave a message for somebody and include as much detail as I can, so that when they're online, they can do the same thing for me. So day to day, I can just talk about my day to day, which I think is a pretty good example. A lot of people think coding is a very solitary act, but I think it's very collaborative. And I think if you look at any successful software project, you'll see that there are internal teams working together. So you've got individuals on teams, those teams working together, and then you'll also probably see teams across across organizations working together as well to try to collaborate, to bring together all these ideas and bring together all these skills to output products. And so, just today, the first thing I did when I got on was I reviewed other people's work. So there's part of the process and part of being on a team is that nobody's perfect, and everybody knows that nobody's perfect. Even if we like to think we are sometimes, we say, oh my gosh, I can do anything, I'm the best coder ever. The next day, I'm probably the worst coder ever. And so that's the benefit of having a team and having people to work with, is that they can come in and provide their experience to to reviewing your code and providing ideas and asking, hey, did you consider, what if someone double taps on this and swipes left? That kind of thing. Right. What happens in this case? And so I was doing that just this morning. And after that, I was reviewing an incident. So like I said, nobody's perfect. And so I was reviewing an incident where something went wrong that affected our users. And I was looking over what happened in order to get an idea and be able to talk about this later. And so these are all two things that are not necessarily doing the code, but they're all code related. And then for the last couple hours, I've been in my text editor on, I've got my laptop set up here and another screen, and I've been in there writing code, trying to solve some problems for Articulate. Well, and by solve problems, I don't mean things are broken. It's more like, hey, we want this to happen. Mm-hmm. So, go into all these code bases and alter all the code you need to alter in order to make that thing happen. So if you want, when I click this button, it should, update my user profile to, add my photo to it or something.
Mm. Awesome. And that actually kind of speaks to what I was thinking next, which are some of the challenges that you address during the day. So it seems like client issues or client requests are some of those challenges. But can you think of any, maybe that was a fun challenge or something that you didn't know that you would have figuring out that you solved?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can share this.
Okay.
There's something that happens a lot of the time is people will accidentally delete stuff. So they'll delete their content, and then they'll confirm that they wanted to delete their content, but they didn't want to delete their content. And so
believe you, I don't think that ever happened.
Yeah. People just see a window pop up and they say, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And so we've got people who are on call, think of like, doctors are on call to, if they're needed, they can come in. There's on call for code as well, because our users are around the world. There's hundreds of thousands to millions of people using our products. And so we want to make sure that we can, provide them the best experience as possible and, keep the clients happy. So someone deleted some stuff. I happen to be on call, and what your job is to figure out where all the stuff, because we're supposed to delete this. I don't know if you know what GDPR is, but there are some rules that have been set up in the past few years across Europe that also apply here around data security. And so the right to be forgotten. So if I want my stuff deleted, you should delete it. And so what we have to do is we're allowed to keep that stuff for a week or so. And so we have to dive into the data, find all the stuff for those people and pull it back out and give it back to them. And that it sounds inefficient, but we try to not automate that in order to protect people's privacy.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so that was a problem to solve recently, is this person needs their data back. Let's go into the data, find all of it and return it to them.
That's awesome. And I think that also gives us a little bit of at least for me, security, that it may not be totally gone. There might be some help if you do at some point.
Maybe.
People like you guys can figure out how to do that. So
Hmm.
awesome.
Hmm.
So kind of a mirror question to that, what is something that you find extremely rewarding in your day? I would imagine solving those types of problems for clients is pretty rewarding, but anything else that you come across during the day or just time that is particularly rewarding for you?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to this. There's the human aspect,
Mm-hmm.
the interpersonal aspect, and also a like slightly selfish aspect. And I think they both work out. So the interpersonal one is that I get to work with people from all sorts of different backgrounds, a very diverse workforce from all around the world. And at least Articulate, they tend to hire people that are self-starters. And so people who don't need to necessarily be told what to do. And so when we're working together, we are feeding off each other's energy and, cracking jokes every now and then, but we're getting stuff done and we're doing it together and contributing to something that's bigger than ourselves. And so that's very rewarding. On the other side, on the like the selfish personal side, coding, if something's already been solved, then there's not much work for me to do. And so yeah, but everybody's got a different idea for how their business should be ran, what the business rules are, different ways of organizing data and storing it and presenting it. And so that means that there's always new problems to solve. It's not like an airplane. Like an airplane has plans that get drawn up, and then you go and make 10,000 airplanes. But with a computer program, every single aspect of it is going to be different than what came before. Because if it was the same thing, you would just copy it over. And so, yeah, so we're solving problems all day long, and I like solving problems and doing so with other people.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Cool. So moving along and thinking kind of in connection with our platform. So again, we are a platform where learners can come on and work through our curriculum at a self-guided pace.
Mhm.
So what works for you will work for the curriculum and work through the courses that are on our platform. And current trends show that there's a rise in self-taught developers. And by the way, I'll pause there to share that we often share a lot of these tips, trends, and tricks in our Tech Tuesday, say that 10 times fast, our Tech Tuesday posts on Instagram. So if you're not following along, please do that because we love to share all this cool information with you guys through that. So current rise in self-taught coders. Can you speak to kind of the unique set of skills that developers who are self-taught may have?
Sure, sure. Um, Most of the developers that I've met that are self-taught, came into the industry a number of years after they got out of high school, and generally they will have worked in other industries. They've done all sorts of different jobs that give them different perspectives and experience. Whether they've done those in our own country or or otherwise, whatever, they've got a whole new perspective that someone who did the sort of like traditional computer science route might not have.
Right.
Yeah, and they're also coming at this from we are coming at this from from a perspective of no one's teaching me this. Like I need to be the one that goes out and does this,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing's going to move that needle to getting me from zero coding skills to I'm flying at 100 miles an hour. I can do all the things. Other than you. So you've got to be the one driving everything. So you've got to be creative. You've got to be, going out there and finding the resources yourself. And so like tools like SC or organizations like SC Codes, and any of the other code teaching tools out there are great, but you have to find out about them and you need to actually go and put the legwork in. And so I think that folks like folks like me, us, whoever, the self-taught developers that are out there, we've had to kind of find our own way, and that makes us, inquisitive by default. And I think that's a huge advantage because you're never really satisfied with oh, the thing just works. It's the thing works, but I need to understand why. I'm not going to feel like I um, understand this well enough, or I'm not going to feel comfortable enough with this until I get that why answered. And so we'll just dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and then we'll get to the end and say, oh, okay, I got it, and then move on. And that's I'm speaking in broad strokes here. I'm sure tons of developers work like this, but it's something that I've noticed is that there's a drive, there's a passion to, we've worked in other industries and we don't want to go back. We don't want to go back. So whatever it takes, we're going to make it happen.
Right.
And I think that's a great quality to have across life in general. And I think that the skills that we pick up in teaching ourselves things, and when I say teaching ourselves, like we're looking up resources like SC codes and everything, but learning on our own, I think that pervades the rest of our lives as well. And so, yeah, not to get too to bringing stuff close to the heart here, but I feel like it's made me a better person.
Absolutely. And I feel like just across our platform, you see the heart of the work and the heart of the learners across the platform who are looking for, a life change. Honestly, when you're changing your career, you're changing your life and the lives of your family and friends. So I almost think you can't talk about it without talking about the heart piece as well. So in the same vein, I'm curious what you could identify as maybe some skill gaps and ways that you can support yourself or look for support if you are a self-taught or taught without a development degree or software engineering degree, or just what do you see as some areas that you may need some additional support if you don't have that padding or foundation of a software development degree?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this comes up a lot. This comes up a lot because if you go the traditional CS route, you've got a ton of skills that people who didn't go that route don't have. But the inverse is true as well. There's a lot of, this is speaking from my own personal experience, and all this is opinion, of course, but there's so many people that have come out of college with a big university name, Ivy League, computer science degree, start at the job on day one, and they don't know how to use any of the tools. They're not able to be productive for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or longer until they've gotten an understanding, a lay of the land.
Right.
On the flip side, there's been a lot of coding schools, and what SC Codes is providing content-wise are things that are in high demand right now. So web development skills, but they're also practical, and that's so you're not getting all the theory that you might get in college, but you're getting a lot of the practical skills. And so that means that day one you can show up and, oh yes, right, SE Code showed me this, or insert teaching tool here showed me how to do this. And so now I can at least get started and get into this entire familiar ecosystem and start being productive sooner. And so when people are fresh into their career and are coming into a new job or looking for jobs, number one thing I can think of is finding mentors. And whether it's like a Yoda Luke Skywalker relationship, or just somebody for you to share your learnings and successes and feelings with, whatever that relationship is, having someone to help keep you on track, who's been around for a while and has succeeded in some way on their own. Someone who can keep you on track, review your resume if you want, maybe give you some ideas like, hey, this one company has a lot of open source projects that they contribute to and accept contributions from people all around the world from. If you want to work at that company, maybe one way of getting in with them would be to look at their open source work and see if there's anything that you can do, whether that's updating documentation, contributing code, asking questions, whatever, because you're getting your name out there and your face out there. So little things like that are just a great way to kind of get on your feet in this industry. And I think that all comes from having some someone or a group to help guide you. Um, so SC codes is, chat channels. The Slack chat channels have, I mean, a ton of mentors in there that are always willing to jump on and help out. And if people are comfortable sharing stuff publicly or privately, I think that's probably the number one way to get going. There is also another thing which can be daunting and terrifying to people coming into this at first, which is the learning never stops. You think, you go through a couple courses, you feel like you're getting the hang of it, and all of a sudden, you get to the top of that hill, and you can see where you need to go, and you realize how much stuff you still don't know, and like that just never ends. That happens to me every week, and there's something very humbling about accepting that and saying, okay, I generally want to go in this direction. I want to be this type of developer. I want to, this is where I want to be in 1 year, ideally. Now, how do I get there? So that's where mentors come in, and where you start getting on the, you say, okay, I want to go this way, and every day or every week, I'm going to focus on, this one thing or this group of things that's going to take me to where I want to go. And when I get there, I realize it's not the end. It's just the next point from which I jump off again. And I think that, like I said, it's very humbling and allows us to always be learning something new and always be open to new ideas so that we don't get locked into any kind of dogmatic ways of thinking. We're always open to, better solutions and learning new things.
Awesome. That's fantastic advice. And it seems like it's a popular topic and common question, because we actually have a question in to the chat about that. M. Bayer, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, 68, says, can you give an example of when you have helped a junior developer to learn to level up? So going back to that, you're always learning point that you just made. And how did you make the decision to help that person, and anything that person did to you to stand out as a senior developer?
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a handful that come to my mind. I mean, I can think of a handful of people from yesterday to the past few weeks that have, let me share I won't share any names, but I'll share someone's story.
That's perfect.
I tend to offer myself out as a, hey, if any of you new developers have questions or need some advice, send me an email. I'm always going to be available to help out when I can. I can't guarantee with a 7, 8 month old that I'll get back to you in a timely manner, but I will get back to you. I promise. And some people take me up on it and some people don't. And there was someone who went through a code school here, who just engaged me, I think we might be on a year now, maybe a year and a half, but engaged me, very, very respectful of my time through email, asking some questions, general guidance. And I noticed that person was, really paying attention to the stuff I was saying, which is pretty rare in life in general. But they were paying attention. They were, following my recommendations, and were succeeding. And now, even if they weren't succeeding, that would be great. But I just noticed how this person kept coming back, and it was great. And they said, hey, okay, I'm not going to get you to do the work for me. Like, I need to do the work, but I've got this one question. And so that kind of respectful approach of, I don't want you to do the work for me, was something that really stood out to me. Because there's been plenty of people I've mentored in the past that can use mentors kind of as a crutch, instead of kind of like guardrails.
Sure.
And so I try to keep that. Yeah, I try to say that from the get-go now. Like, hey, I'm not here to write the code for you, but I will guide you to the solution somehow, like whether that's through resources online or what. So that person went through the code school. I also should say that person is, I believe, worked in automotive industry. I can't remember, but for 20, 30 years. So they're on the older side of the developer average these days. And that person, worked at a few startups, wasn't making really good money, and was concerned about this. And I worked with them to, kind of craft their approach to to applying to all these different companies they might work at, and recommended a few. Um, the person did the work, met with the people, kind of kept showing up over a period of time, and as of last week, got hired. And
Oh,
so that's, yeah, and that person, I had said, look, even if they have an intern position, just apply for it and get your foot in the door, because that intern position is better than no position.
yeah.
And guess what? They went for the intern interview, and the people there said, you don't qualify for the intern, position. Why don't you, do you want to come on as a full-time dev?
Awesome.
And so that was really rewarding for me, because I didn't do the work. I just said, here's some inspiration. Here's some guidance from my opinion, which is, of course, I've got all my own biases. But I'm going to be here if you need me.
Right.
And so that person took me up on that and is now gainfully employed. And it's, yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
See,
yeah,
and there, I mean, you can't help but feel that heart piece for someone like that who got a job because they've done the work, but they've also reached out to resources that are available. That's
yeah.
fantastic.
There's,
Congratulations both.
thank you. There's also, I think there's some people on here who might know my cousin's husband, but did the same thing and provided as much guidance as I could, and something that's slightly heartbreaking, but also okay, is like there's a point at which they don't need you anymore. They've grown beyond you, like, and that's, on one hand, that makes me sad, because you kind of lose that relationship in one sense, but you don't really lose it. It just turns into something else, where instead of needing you, you're you're on the same footing level now. And so it's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. I love to hear stories like that. And again, have mentioned hearing those stories on SC Codes and then just out in the tech community in general is just so cool. So thank you for sharing that and sharing that
Sure.
personal story. Um, I know we have another question in, and as we get to wrapping up, I will open the floor up for some questions from our audience. Thank you so much for how many people are on viewing with us. That's awesome. But while we are getting some questions in, I would love to just hear from you some current trends or data or topics or things that are interesting to you in the industry, things that we should be looking out for and maybe digging into a little bit more. And we are always looking for cool topics to share with our learners and community. So we'd love to know kind of what's on your mind in terms of development.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Um, there there are a lot of different opinions on how applications and servers and all this stuff should all work. And there's some really cool things going on in each camp. And so I've got a couple that come to mind right now that I'll share. So one, um, when you think about how a web application or an app works, I'll just briefly explain something. So there's the front end, which is what you are interacting with, seeing or experiencing, if you're visually impaired. So you're experiencing something, you're tapping buttons, you're inputting text, and pushing OK, yes, delete all my content. And okay, so that's the interface. That's the front end, that's the interface. There's the back end, which is a server off somewhere in the cloud. You're paying somebody to have this computer where your application is running. And so when you say delete all my content,
Mm-hmm.
that sends a message off somewhere, and that is some cloud data store, and it'll do that work and then come back to you and tell you it's all fine. So someone had to write the code for that backend, and that backend, generally, historically, we have to find a way to make those servers, run. Like, we have to do all that work ourselves. Like, it used to be that you had a server in your building. Then it was a cloud server, but it's still a program that you're in control of. That you have to, if it crashes, if it breaks, you got to deal with it. Well, there's something nowadays called serverless, where you don't have to deal with any of that. Like, Amazon's got Amazon's a big one. So is Cloudflare for this serverless concept where you basically send a message to Amazon. And it's not that your server's running. I mean, it is, but Amazon's handling all of that. You just send it and then you pay for the amount of time that you're spending, with when you delete all your content. How long does that take on the back end? How complicated and how many resources does that take? And that's what I'm paying for. And then if I'm not using it, I'm not paying for it. And so if it, you don't have to worry about it crashing, you don't have to worry about restarting it. You just do that. And so there's a concept called serverless, which is really cool, especially for new devs, because you can focus on business logic, you can focus on your interfaces and not have to worry about all the backend stuff. I'm also going to plug, there's another company, it's a local company down here called hyper.io, which has the same thing at its core. Take away the database and the server and all that stuff and just let me write my business logic and send it off to another company to handle all this complex services. On the other side of the argument, which is where I generally find myself, is if I've got an application, let's say it's Ruby on Rails, so which I believe, yeah, you've got a Ruby on Rails course on SC Codes, right?
We do, yes.
Great. So let's say I've gone through this Ruby on Rails course, and I want to make the next great recipe app, and I want to have a complex front end. I want to have a front end, an interface that can do all sorts of fancy stuff. Historically, what we've done is write a lot of JavaScript, which you've also got some courses on.
Yeah.
I'll write a bunch of JavaScript, and that JavaScript, is all for interactions, and it gets downloaded by whoever is using your application. So when you go to a web page, if it takes a long time to load, it might be that you're downloading a lot of JavaScript code in order to then run that fancy interface code on my own computer or on your computer. Right. And so, so you might see like loading. It's downloading all kinds of stuff. Well, that's not super great. And it's also not great for people if you've got a slow internet connection, if you live in a remote area, like when we lived in some remote areas in New Zealand, I'd try to go to a website, it would take 30, 40 seconds to load. And so that's been a big trend, doing a lot of code on the front end for the last few years. But there's something that's called, HTML over the wire. And this takes the shape of, I'm just going to throw some names out there. If this is recorded, you can look it up later. So in Ruby on Rails, there's something called Stimulus.js or Hotwire that are pretty new. There's something in the Phoenix Elixir framework called LiveView, and there's something in the Laravel PHP framework called like Livewire. I can't keep all this stuff straight, but the idea is that anytime you want to do something fancy, you want to, instead of downloading all this extra code down to every single person's computer, only when they're doing that interaction, the server will then send all, whatever's needed to the front end. So like if I want to, on my recipe app, calculate the difference between, okay, I've got this recipe in cups, but I need to change that to some other measurement, or it's in pounds and I need kilograms. Instead of doing all that with JavaScript on the front end, and having the client have to download the user download all that stuff, instead you can do it on the server and pull it down ad hoc. And so they're only having to download the features that they're using, if that makes any sense.
I see. It does. Yes.
So it makes every page load really fast. It means it's the bare minimum is coming across the wire to your computer or your phone. And if you've got a data plan, you might want to preserve that data plan and not have a certain application or whatever hog it. So that's another thing that's pretty big when it comes to development. And the last thing I wanted to plug, which I'm very passionate about, is accessibility. There's been a lot of, there's the legal aspect of this where companies like Domino's have been sued for not having interfaces that are accessible to everybody, through people who have visual impairments, or have any loss of motor function, or just a temporary loss of anything. Like if I broke my arm, can
Right.
I still use these machines and order a pizza? And so accessibility is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's rooted in, if you're learning HTML, which plug, I think you'll also have a course on front end basics.
Yes.
So when I'm learning, when we're learning HTML, or even if we've been using it for a really long time, there are ways of writing it that can really provide value to assistive devices like screen readers. Um, so there's ways of writing it, and so when learning HTML, I see a lot of new developers kind of like get the gist and then skip over it. But it's something that I think that code schools and learning platforms can really drive home about how important semantic HTML is. They call it semantic. Like if I've got a header, call it a header. If I've got a link to another page, make sure that it's a link. If I've got a button, make sure it's a button. Like little things like this. Providing alternative text for an image, which you can also do on Instagram.
Right.
Anything like that, it will provide a much better experience for anyone that's using it that needs that experience.
That is awesome. And again, we keep seeing this thread of how tech is so close to the heart work and changing lives, and being sensitive to how tech can support the lives of all of us as an equalizer. So all of those points are really interesting, I'm sure, to our learners and to our greater community. And definitely the last point of accessibility should be important to all of us. So thank you for sharing all of those. I know we have a question in too. Hopefully very quickly, if we could get to just a little bit more about your apprenticeship and some points that you took away. Do you think that you would be where you are now without that? And just some overall thoughts on your apprenticeship.
Yeah. So what that was somebody took a chance on me, which they didn't have to, and I don't know what they saw. Maybe they just, I don't know. But whatever it was, they came in and said, "Hey, we'll pay you $8 an hour." But I was so self-conscious. This is from the get-go. They said $8 an hour, but I was so self-conscious, and I was so like ignorant of what they were doing, that I said, you know what, I saved up a little bit of money. I'm privileged enough to have done that, working all these different jobs. I had some cash, and so I said, you know what, don't pay me until I contribute, because I wanted that job. I wanted that, and I wanted to undercut anybody else who was going to take that.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, because I've always been told, by my dad and other people, just if you can get a foot in the door, that the rest, if you can get to the door and get your foot through it, then you've got all this possibility in front of you. And so I wanted to be able to just be at the table, and help kind of drive my own future there. So I started by pairing, because this was a pair programming company that valued pair programming. So pair programming is when you have two people working together. So you might have if you're in person, you might have a single screen and two keyboards, and one person is driving and one person is there, as extra eyes, extra help. You talk through all your problems as you're coding, and it's great. I love it. I still do it. I do it remotely now through Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the tech is. I'll pair with people from around the world, and I still learn stuff to this day. But it's a great way to cross-pollinate ideas. So with me, I would pair with people, and they would just drop their knowledge on me all day long. And most of it, was in the one ear, out the other, because I wasn't ready to hear some of it. But during that apprenticeship, I was there 40, 50 hours a week. some people would stay after work and help me. You know, because I would be learning. I would spend all my extra time, like after work, you know, reading through books, trying to make, well, actually a recipe app. um, you know, I was making that for my grandma, but it never was good enough for her to use. So, but you know, working on that. But people would guide me after work and say, "Oh no, this is okay. I see what you're trying to do here, but did you know about this?" Or they would take the Mr. Miyagi approach and be like, do you think you understand this?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And they said, "Okay." And then they would delete the project off my computer and say, "If you understand, then you can recreate it." I said, "Oh my goodness." So, so it was a lot of that, but that's where I got my first taste of never stopping the learning process. You know, seeking out people to help guide me, people that I identify have different skill sets. Be like, "Hey, you seem to be really good at this. Can you teach me?" Or I've got this question. Like, if you've got a minute, can you help me with it? And yeah, and so that's what that looked like. And after a month, I contributed code into their application, and that's when I came on as $8 an hour, and did that for another 2 months. Basically, just you know, trying to ramp up my knowledge level and my contribution level. And at the end of 3 months, which was the original kind of evaluation period time for the apprenticeship, at the end of 3 months of you know, learning, getting thrown in the deep end, talking to people, studying all the time, you know, they deemed me to be good enough to come on as a full-time employee. And it was great. I got healthcare from a job, you know, for the first time really. And yeah, it was really special. And so I think at the 6 month mark, there was an unconference here in Charleston called Bar Camp. And it was at that I shared a talk on basically the path from, you know, knowing actually nothing to, you know, writing application code over this 6 month period. Here's what I did. And I think that gave me the idea and the understanding that teaching others is part of the learning process. And so that what I started doing from that point on was people who were new to or people who were, you know, trying to learn, like I would try to teach them, because all of a sudden me teaching them, I have to learn how everything works down to the core so that I can explain. And so in doing that, I was teaching myself and providing value to others. And so, well, at least I think I was. I don't know, but I think they got value. Yeah. But that apprenticeship was huge. And as my father liked to say, he said, you got paid to get a graduate education. Which
That's awesome.
like that, you know, that's almost true, but I was getting paid to learn, which was huge. And that's so valuable. Yeah. What did you have any more apprenticeship questions? Like, I just studied, made stuff. It was probably unhealthy and unsustainable, but studied, sought out mentorship, and just coded all day.
That's totally that grind and kind of hustle that you see from learners on our platform, and I guess learners in general who are going about getting these jobs in a different way. So totally love hearing those stories as well. Looking at our chat. Perfect. Well, I think this first series, all of our other developers who are fantastic and fabulous definitely have a hard act to follow with our first series, Robert, because you have just been a wealth of knowledge and inspiration for our learners, and motivation, I hope, for those who are also developers like you to get involved with our program or other programs if you're not in South Carolina, to help lend a hand to the next generation of developers coming forward. That's something that I've really pulled outside of all of the tech gems that you dropped, is just the importance of being a support for someone else in the workplace, using your job, your skills to make the world a little bit more equitable for other folks. So thank you for the tech knowledge, but also that, again, kind of heart spiel that plays into what you do as well. I really appreciate you taking the time to share what you do and how you work with our learners with SC Codes. So I would love for you to end our first session with just any advice, words of encouragement for our learners on our platform who are started. We've been really fortunate to have some great learners join on in a couple of months through our info session on our webpage if you want to learn more about those. But lots of new learners across our platform, lots of new mentors. So would love for you to end us with any inspiration you have for them.
Yeah. I think I got something for you.
Okay.
So the approach that I think I've learned this from my family, from the guy who for some reason hired me as an apprentice, and all this stuff. I've learned that if you put good things out in the world, you're making it a better place. And it doesn't mean like there should be no expectation that that's ever going to come back and help you. Like that's so it's like trying to be altruistic, even though there might not be such a thing, but trying to put something out in the world just because it's the right thing to do, and because the people that you help can potentially help someone else, and then that person can help someone else too. And so you're kind of paying it forward and giving back, because I've been given so much over my entire life, and there are plenty of developers that I've mentored or given I've gifted subscriptions to that live in various African nations or across the Middle East that just would never have access to any of these, well, SE codes maybe, but to any of these expensive resources. And so I put stuff out there in the hopes that the rising tide floats all boats, and that's the world I want to live in. And so that's be the change you want to see in the world, kind of thing.
Love that. Awesome. Yeah. I don't and add anything to that. That is perfect, and definitely why we are here and are thankful to have people like you who join us, Robert. So thank you. Thank you. I can't.
Yeah. Can I add one more last thing?
Please, yes.
No matter how hard what you're learning seems, you've compared to code, like life, all the things that we do in life are way more complex. Like code is just something that we just got to keep looking at. And eventually, if it doesn't make sense today or tomorrow or the next day, you just keep showing up. And that's all you got to keep doing, is just keep showing up, and your brain will eventually recognize the patterns. And then, you just rinse and repeat. And that's how we learn with coding. You recognize the patterns, and the trick is just keep showing up. And so if you're feeling disheartened, you're feeling like, gosh, I can never learn this. How could I ever make my brain wrap around how, a loop or recursion or inheritance or whatever works? It's okay. Just keep showing up, and eventually it's going to click. I learned very slowly, but if I had one superpower, it would be that I won't quit something that I think is a good idea. And so me learning is a good idea for my family, so that's what I'm gonna do.
I love that. I know Katie is on, and I think that keep showing up tagline should be somewhere connected to our learners, because that is awesome advice, and captures, I think, kind of the spirit of SE codes, but also the spirit you need to make it in this industry.
Right.
Thank you for that.
That's all I got. I think I might be all out of good advice today. I got a lot of bad advice, but I don't think anybody wants that.
Well, I'm glad that we tapped into all of your great advice, and we are saving this video. It's going to be under our highlights, so learners that are on, please feel free to refer back to it. If you're new and joining and thinking about SE codes, please know that you can be this kind of difference maker across our platform. And we would so appreciate having you alongside Robert as a mentor and a cheerleader for our learners. So on behalf of SE Codes, thank you again, Robert. You can see Robert on our platform, on our Slack channel. He's in our mentor channel hanging out, and I know he would be happy to connect with you there as well. So thank you so much to everyone who joined as well. It was great having you on, and be sure to come back next month for another episode of Ask a Developer. I don't know, Robert was so good, we might just have him come back next month.
I'll do it, but you should get some more ideas up in here.
We'll do it. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.